Hello and welcome to the shop. I have the need to make some cutting boards. I've never made a cutting board before, so it's kind of weird to be a woodworker and not make a cutting board. Normally that's one of the first projects that you do. So like any good woodworker, I've been all over YouTube watching videos like crazy about how to make cutting boards. And if you think about it, you cut it, you glue it together, and that's a cutting board. So it's not a basic cutting board like I want to make is not that difficult. Now there are some designs out there that some of you guys do with twisting the wood. I mean, just it's amazing what you guys are doing. But I'm just going to make some simple ones. And I saw a few patterns that I liked on different sites, and I pulled out my graph paper and I've drawn up a couple of them, and I'm going to show you one in particular that I'm going to work on in this video, and hopefully the end result is a beautiful cutting board. This is a pretty simple design. It's going to involve 6 pieces of wood of 2 separate species. I'll start out with a 2 1/4 inch piece and work my way down gradually to a 1/4 inch piece. I'll do the same thing with the second species, and then I'll use a piece of each of those to cap the board off at either end. I think it should be a nice looking board. It's going to be about 16 inches long by about 10 inches wide and 3/4 inch thick. For this project, I've decided to use walnut and sapele. This certainly turned out to be a mammoth cutting board. 16 inches does not sound that long on a piece of paper, but when you see it laid out in reality, it actually is probably far bigger than the average person would want to use. So what it will do is, I'm going to go ahead and build this one because I've already cut it. The good thing about it is I didn't cut 3 or 4 of them, so I'll go back and resize my sections and bring this together a little bit and try to get it down around, I don't know, maybe 14 inches, somewhere between 13, 14 inches. I picked up some Titebond 3. It is waterproof, and that's what most people seem to be using for cutting boards. So what I'm going to do now is just flip these pieces on their side, get everything slathered up in glue, and then we'll tighten these clamps down and get this cutting board on its way to drying. I wiped as much of the glue squeeze out as I could off of the cutting board with a damp rag. Now I'm just going to let it set in the clamps overnight and make sure it's good and dry. Well, my cutting board is out of clamps, and I've learned quite a bit with this first cutting board, and the first thing I learned is I want to size all of my wood to the same thickness or as close to the same thickness as I can before I glue it up. And the main reason I want to do that is because I'll be able to put a couple of cawls across the cutting board to make sure that it's nice and flat, because I did notice a tiny bow on the bottom of the cutting board. It kind of bows up a tiny bit. Not a lot, and I think with having inch thick boards here, I should be able to take that out and still stay a little above the 3/4 inch range. You'll notice on this end that it's nice and flat. This was the 1/4 inch piece of sapele, and it stuck up above the same amount as this piece of sapele, and I could actually sort of flex it with my hand, and I thought, I run that through the planer, it's going to hit that and it's just going to tear it off and it's going to chunk down in there. So I went ahead and took a small hand plane and just took that down to the same level as the rest of the boards. So what I want to do now is I'm going to go ahead and go over to the planer, and I'm going to run this through the planer and attempt to get this top layer level, and then we'll flip it over and run the bottom layer through and just try to get it squared up as best we can, and then we'll see where we go from there. Fresh from the planer, take a look at the cutting board. That is a really cool design. I like it a lot. I had to take off a little more than I thought because of the bow that I had. That was a learning experience. Calls next time will fix that. But if you take a close look, you can see I'm still right at 3/4 of an inch, which is exactly where I want it to be for the thickness of this cutting board. Next up, I'm going to head over to the table saw, and we're just going to square these outside edges. I wanted to show you guys the progress I'm making on my cutting boards. I got all of the corners rounded over, and they are ready to be sanded and then placed in mineral oil. Really, really loving this cherry and maple. They all look great. I've decided to put the cutting boards in cake pans. That way I can pour a little bit of oil on top of them, wipe it in, and then pour a little extra oil around the pan, and they can set and soak. And periodically I'll just flip them over to let both sides get an equal time in the oil. I'm just going to use a little bit of this butcher block oil, and let's pour a little on and see how it looks. It's really, really bringing out the cherry. Isn't that beautiful? They slide around quite a bit in the pan. That's just going to be beautiful. So let me get a little bit more oil in there. And now we'll just let it set and soak. Make sure we get some on the ends. Should be plenty on this rag to give this board a little bit of a wipe. Look at that, isn't it beautiful? Really brings out the color. I'll get a little bit of oil dumped in this pan in a minute. Let's just bring the last one up here. Get a little more oil because my rag is starting to kind of dry out. Definitely the best part. We're having a little technical difficulty here because the oil is extremely slippery and the pans are sliding back and forth, but you know what? That's not going to hurt anything. We're still going to end up with some beautiful cutting boards. Let me go ahead and top these off with a little oil, and we'll let them soak for a while. Here's a quick shot of the 4 cutting boards that I made. This is the one that I primarily focused on for the video, but the other 3 were sort of in and out of the shots because I was working on them all together. I am very happy with how they turned out. Absolutely love them. I think this is my favorite with the cherry, but I also really like this one with the sapele and the maple. The maple in that is beautiful. I'd like to thank you for joining me for this project. I actually can't believe that I've been woodworking for, and I don't even know how many years it is now, and I have never made a cutting board. So it was fun for me because these were my first. I think they turned out absolutely beautiful. I hope you agree. I want to thank you for hanging out with me and following along with this project. I want you to know that you are always welcome in my shop. Come back and see me again real soon. Take care, everybody. Have a good evening.